This morning I'm talking on behalf of a big group of collaborators and they're outlined here who have been working with on GRDC funded projects. One was mainly on break crops and the other one, our more recent one, is on stubble management, and we're looking at discontined seeders. And so today our talk really is on stopping that seed set, the double break options, and I'm trying to pull together just the specific data from those projects on those results. So I also would like to thank, before we go any further, the farmers who have given us their areas from their properties for the last 7-8 years. They don't get enough thanks on my part. They give it to us free, and so especially on a weed study, I certainly don't name the farmers, but I just really like to thank those farmers who who have given up their property for us and for our research. So for those people who are out of town, most of the research you're going to hear today, or the results, will be from this area here. It's from somewhere south of Wagga to about Cowra. You'll hear results from 3 research projects. The first thing to really look at, and we've been talking about, for us, our biggest problem is annual ryegrass, and that's what we've been focusing on for the number of years. And the issue, what we've found, is that what does ryegrass do? What is it a major problem for? And it really, for every tonne of ryegrass we get in a wheat crop, we're losing about half a tonne of wheat yield. So that has a major impact on profitability. And it's actually worse, as we've all been hearing about, in other crops such as lentils or pulse crops. So it is a major constraint to profitability in our farming system. So we had 2 questions we're going to kind of look at today from these 2 projects. And the first question really relates to herbicide-resistant annual ryegrass. Can it be managed cost-effectively under break crops and be profitable? And the second question really is what we've been doing in the last 3 years, is can we use a complementary management changes to make our farming system more profitable, sustainable, if we are trying to retain stubble in our farming systems using discontined seeders. And today really we're just going to be looking at can we also keep reducing that annual ryegrass weed burden. It's a must. We have to do it, and everyone's been talking about it this morning. You have to get it down to a low base, and then you can do what you like in your farming system, as long as everything else is good, like your soil constraints. So the first thing we've done, and John Broster thankfully got up here, is we go and test all our annual ryegrass before going into a trial site. And why do we do that? Because it helps us actually design our, what herbicides we need. People have already, talked about that today. But we've got 3 experiments we're going to look at. The first 2 experiments, we actually sent plants away to South Australia. And more recently, in our 3rd experiment, we actually sent the seed down to John for testing. And there's nothing unusual about that. We found very high, resistance to select, to our FOPs. We had no resistance to factor. The interesting thing here in experiment 2 was it came back with a very low herbicide resistance to select, but we found that was incorrect. And in our 3rd experiment, we found, it was only a Hussar, our group Bs, Gleans, where it was highly resistant to, but because we had sent seed away, we were also able to get a resistance test on simazine and trifluorine, which was very important. So, and they both came back with no resistance. So, for us, it's our number 1 rule, what we do now. The other thing to notice is our initial seed bank. We actually go out and at the start of, before we do a trial, we take out hundreds of soil cores basically, and we actually grow them on for 3 months and find out what is the seed bank in each of the paddocks. So in each of those 3 paddocks we had about 1,815 plants, just under 3,000 plants, or about another 1,800 plants. So, we've had high numbers of annual ryegrass seed banks sitting in these paddocks. And this is nothing unusual for a lot of the areas across, New South Wales. And this is, these are what what the paddocks looked like at the start of the trials. That was before a knockdown, mind you. So we had, for our first two experiments, we designed it so in year one, we were looking at, we either sowed canola, a Roundup Ready, or a TT canola. We had a legume crop, we either sowed it as a grain crop or as a brown manure. We had a wheat crop, we either as high input or low input, and I'll explain that a bit later. Or we had a fallow. So in our year one, that's what we sowed. Our year two, we came back with either a Roundup Ready canola, a wheat as a hay, which was cut for hay before the annual ryegrass actually hit maturity, or we sowed a wheat high or low input. So we basically had a double break, a single break, or we had a continuous cereal, and that was what we were looking at. Can a break crop and what type of system will be more profitable and be more effective at reducing ryegrass? And in our third year, we just sowed the whole trial to wheat, and it was sprayed with Sakura and Avadex. Actually, no, it was just Sakura, sorry. These two trials were all sown on 305mm row spacing, was with a tine seeder. In experiment 3, we did use a disc, but this is a few years ago now. So we've used knife points. We also have coulters on the front of our seeder, so we can get through up to about 10 tonne of stubble, and we have been able to do it. I wouldn't like to do it on thousands of hectares, but for a trial purpose, we can actually get through the stubble. So our crop treatments. So we're looking at a Roundup Ready canola. So we're looking at a hybrid, canola type. So we sow our crops early. We're trying to, in this system, we're trying to make it get out of the stubble, quicker. We're putting more fertiliser on it. We're using in our Roundup Ready system. We were talking about herbicides this morning. We'll be using trifluralin to start off with, and then we'll be coming back with 2 applications of Roundup Ready at 2 and 6 leaf. Compared to a TT canola system where we're using an open pollinated, less fertiliser, so it's a little bit less N, so it's a cheaper system, and we're using atrazine and trifluralin to start off with as our preams, coming back with atrazine and clethodim later. We also, in one of our trials, we actually came back with factor because the clethodim was so high in that test, and factor did a very good job. This compared to our wheat, where we're saying we're looking at competition now. In our high input wheat, we're looking at 150 plants per metre square, compared to our low input wheat, which is about 75 plants per metre square. So we're looking at more competition, more fertiliser. So we're trying to get that early vigour. We're trying to get that crop growing quick, and we're looking at more expensive herbicides. So we're doing that rotation. So in our year one rotation, we're using a Sakura Avadex. Year two, we'll be probably a box of gold. In fact, in this trial, we actually, in year one, we did a Sakura Avadex, and that was pre-emergent, and at 2 leaf stage, we came back and put a 2.5 litres of box of gold over. So we were really trying to jump on top of this ryegrass. And then we're looking at our fallow. So our fallow was a weed from July onwards. It was always double knocked. Our hay, we'll cut for hay. We cut the hay before the ryegrass set seed, and then we had a knockdown afterwards. Our lupins, in one of the trials, we had cheaper herbicides on it, but we did in one of experiment 1 we spray topped it because we were able to get it due to the trial design. But you'll see what happens when we weren't able to spray top in our second experiment. And our legume brown manure, we were able to have a double knock at our peak biomass. So that was our kind of comparisons. So in year one, so here we've got crop and input, wheat low, wheat high. That's our treatments compared to our untreated control. So these are all. So the cost of actually, for our herbicides for year one in our high wheat, input wheat was about $142 a hectare per year, and that was because as I said, we used Sakura, we used Avadex, we came back with box of gold at 2.5 litres per hectare in the system. We were trying to buy our way out of the system. Could we make a cereal, pay its way and control ryegrass? So it was very expensive compared to the other kind of costs. they're considerably cheaper. And this is what really happened, in year one on panicles. So, it was a good estimate of, how effective the system was working so far. So, our low wheat came back. We had 500, it was a diuron Treflan mix. So it came back with 504, panicles compared to an untreated wheat of 1,042. So we had about a 52% control of grass from that system. Both in experiment 1 or experiment 2, it controlled it, but there was a hell of a lot of panicles. It's scary when you look at 500 panicles per metre square. Our other treatments, so our high input wheat, we spent a lot of money, but somewhere between, it controlled 93 to 90%, 7% of the grass weeds were controlled using either a high input wheat, lupin grain, or a TT canola. So that was in experiment 1. And over here in experiment 2, we had very good control with high input wheat. It was a better year for spraying those that kind of herbicide mix. Unfortunately, over here in experiment 2, we had poorer grass control from atrazine simazine and from trifluoralin. And, at harvest time, we're looking at 462 panicles per metre square in our lupin, even though our lupin crop was a very good crop, and 193 in our TT canola. So as a break crop, they weren't very effective. And we weren't able to get on there and crop top, which was a major problem for us. The only ones which were 100% control of our annual ryegrass was our Roundup Ready canola, our brown manure peas or brown manure lupins, or our fallow. So basically they controlled all our seed, our ryegrass seed in 1 year. So that's just, that's our first crop. So what happened? After 3 years of the trial, it's just a double break. So we've got our fallow canola, lupin grain canola, lupin brown manure canola, or a double rake, all our double rakes. This is our panicles in year 1, panicles in year 2, panicles in year 3. The idea of trying to get your numbers down is to keep hammering it until you reduce your seed set. In the end, of our double break, basically we ended up with about a 97% reduction in seed set after 3 years, which, is what you're trying to aim for. Now, these numbers here, for us, a number of 56, you've got to think of this in a research capability. A number of 56 means we found one plant from all our soil cores we took grow. So, it's very hard for us we can't really get a 0%. So, just take this in context. So, we've hammered it very, effectively. Our single breaks over here, so our lupin grain wheat, these are all our high wheat. So, in our first year we've had a break crop, and our second year we've put a lot of herbicides on. And we've got crop competition. So, our high wheat was 150 plants per metre square. So they were all basically, year 1, very effective. Here we were pretty effective at controlling panicles. And they weren't quite as good, in our single break compared to our double, but they were still reasonably effective. Certainly more effective than our high wheat, which ended up with still 366, panicles per metre square, seeds per metre square after 3 years. The issue is if you had any year which you didn't control your ryegrass. So where we had a low wheat in 1 year out of the 3, our numbers blew out by 70%. So it was really, really important to just keep on hammering it every year after year after year and get them low. And once you've got them low, then you can sow so many other things. I can think about putting a lentil crop in. I can think about diversifying my system so much more. Our second experiment was similar, except the fact that our single break was, where we had a high wheat in the second year, it was also very good. So, we had 95 to 99% reduction in annual ryegrass seed bank. So what we're saying is, okay, sometimes the single break works, but more consistently, your double break will reduce your ryegrass seed bank. And where a double break doesn't work is, if for some unknown reason your system fails. If we have our TT canola or our lupin grain, we don't get on top of it, in year 1 or in year 2, and we have that blowout, it just makes the whole system not work. And, I'd love to have a system which actually, we could have put a, spray top over the top. We could have put our header and weed seed harvested, but unfortunately these research trials are smaller and you just can't do it. And so it's really good that we actually have some, on-farm, scale capability. So if you're looking at gross margins though, so the best gross margin actually was our Roundup Ready canola high wheat. So we averaged about $883 per hectare per year, but we still got, we were sitting on about 219 seeds per metre square. The beauty of a double break is here. Okay, we were still reasonably, we still were reasonably profitable, but we had better control of our seed bank. So, there are ways of doing it. What unfortunately was, what was unfortunate is, our brown manure peas, our brown manure lupins, they're very effective at actually, controlling our ryegrass, provide a lot of nitrogen also, but they weren't very profitable. And which brings us to kind of our next experiment, because we've kind of gone on from that. So our next experiment really was experiment 3. It was, this is an experiment set up with Greg Condon. Sorry, Greg, I'm going to throw you in there. James Hunt, a whole range of consultants, where we were looking at stubble retained systems and how we could manage our sequences better to improve profitability, sustainability, and in a medial, in a paddock which had some ryegrass, but it wasn't totally herbicide, resistant to every herbicide. So we set up a fully phased experiment, and that is really important, and it's really come out this year, because a fully phased experiment means every year you sow every treatment, so there's no year effects. So we set up a fully phased experiment. We had a ryegrass population of about 1,840 plants per metre square. We tested 2 opener types, 3 management strategies, and 4 replicates. Now, I don't profess to be the best person who can drive or operate a disc seeder. There's people out here who manage it so much better than we do. So we're doing the best we can under situations. So keep the results in context with a research capability, philosophy. So yeah, we had our XL single disc, and we compared that with a FlexiCoil stiletto knife point. So it's a dual banding, a boot which can put deep band nitrogen underneath. And our 3 management strategies were, now I actually put these down just so people can get an idea of the kind of herbicides we use, the treatments we use. So we had a conservative strategy. So it was a TT canola, wheat. So that was our strategy. So every year we had a canola sown, a first year sown of wheat and a second year sown of wheat. So here we looked at 80 plants per metre square. So it was a lower population. We had 20 kilograms of nitrogen up front, Treflan and Diuron IBS. But we couldn't use Treflan in the disc system, so we basically just had Diuron. So, just keep this in mind. It was about the discussion we had this morning as well. In our TT canola, same nitrogen, Treflan, atrazine, clethodim, atrazine. So that was our kind of mixes. So we are rotating our chemistry as much as we can, trying to mix and rotate. In our aggressive strategy, we've doubled our plant population again. We're looking at crop competition. We're trying to, outcompete weeds. We're trying to put more nitrogen up front. So we're putting 40 kilograms per hectare up front at sowing. In our wheat, we're using a Sakura Avidex year 1, Boxer Gold year 2. In our canola, we'll use trifluralin, propizamide, and then come back with Roundup Ready, twice. So we're trying to mix and rotate in that system as best we can.